Around 500 BCE, ancient Greek artists decorated their pottery with dynamic black figures that told compelling, often fantastical stories. In 2,500 years, things have changed. But not that much. This is Michel Ocelot. He's a French filmmaker who has made his mark in the world of animation for his stunning fairy tales and fantasies. Despite his complete lack of formal training, Ocelot has won numerous awards, including the Lifetime Achievement Award at the World Festival of Animated Film. But while the stories he tells are beautiful, the way he tells them is amazing as well. Most animation companies use the medium to recreate our exact world in lifelike detail. Michel Ocelot is different. He uses animation to do what only animation can do: create stunning fantasies completely removed from our own world. Analyzing Ocelot's unique silhouette and cutout films reveals exactly how he can create such timeless fantasies. Ocelot crafts a fantasy by completely abandoning realism. His worlds are not concerned with looking like ours, which means they are under no obligation to follow the same rules. A world made of paper lace is a world in which you can row a hot air balloon with feather oars no problem. Even the most fantastic elements in his stories make sense because from the very first frame of his films, we've left our own world behind. This is accomplished in many ways. The first thing to take us out of our world and into a fantasy land is narrative framing. For instance, the premise for each of his silhouette stories is three characters in a derelict cinema coming together to enact anything that comes to mind. We watch as they build a world, and more importantly, as they transform into something that we know isn't real. Incorporating the audience into this transition makes it even easier to accept the unreality. We don't need to suspend our disbelief, we willingly expel it completely. Second, he combines art styles. In his silhouette animation, black figures are set against vibrant backgrounds that switch between and combine representational and non-representational art. This blend supports a setting that is both familiar in the shapes of the people and the representational backgrounds, and unfamiliar in the unusual presentation of the human form and the non-representational backgrounds. Audiences are challenged to use their imaginations to a greater extent when watching Ocelot's films than traditional animation calls for, as we must project the complex expression and body language that the stiff, featureless, and textureless characters do not inherently present. To a certain extent, the audience is creating their own fantasy, in much the same way people craft a fantasy when reading or being told a story. This leads to not only a richer fantasy world, but a more engaged audience as well. We become a part of the story rather than passive observers. Finally, now that we've left behind reality and are firmly planted in a world unlike our own, Ocelot maintains the fantasy by telling magical stories that take advantage of his medium. He uses strong visuals that highlight the difference between our world and the one he has created. For example, in his first short film, Les Trois Inventeurs, the entire film is constructed out of paper, and the grand finale is the paper literally burning up. No other medium could do this and still have the same mood, tone, and even story. The stunning backgrounds of his other films wouldn't be as iconic if his subjects weren't simple silhouettes. There's just no other way the unique fantasy of Michel Ocelot would exist if he had used any other medium. In conclusion, Ocelot's work is unlike anything that the big names in animation are doing. He rejects the pseudo-realism of contemporary animation, and the result is a style that supports his story. By creating worlds that are so unlike our own, he gives himself the freedom to tell stories that are just as fantastical. To recap, Ocelot often uses narrative framing to take viewers out of reality. He combines styles and mediums to visually craft a world unlike our own, leaving plenty of room for the audience's own imagination. And finally, he tells original, engaging, and magical stories that take advantage of the unique capabilities of his style of animation. So, if you want to create an amazing fantasy world for the screen, consider using Ocelot's methods, and always take full advantage of your chosen medium, using it to do what only it can do.